Here's something that should terrify you. America just became nearly invincible. And that might be the worst thing that could happen to us. While we're celebrating record energy production and building a $500 billion missile shield, China isn't worried. They're actually throwing a party. And what happened at Davos this January explains exactly why. Stay with me, because this changes everything you think you know about American power. Every year, the world's most powerful people gather at the World Economic Forum to talk about the future. This year's official theme? Collaboration for the Intelligent Age. Sounds nice, right? But here's what was actually happening in those closed-door meetings. Defense ministers, intelligence officials, and international bankers were all asking the same question. What the hell just happened to the Western Alliance? Because something fundamental has shifted, and it wasn't subtle. Let me take you back to a specific moment. President Trump is talking about Canada. He throws out this line about how Canada only survives because of the United States. Most people heard that and thought, yeah, that's just Trump being Trump. A little rude, maybe tactless, but whatever. But geopolitical analysts? They heard something completely different. They heard an ultimatum. The kind you can't take back once you've said it out loud. Think about what Canada actually is to us. We share the longest undefended border in the world with them. Nearly 5,500 miles. No walls, no checkpoints. Just trust. 75% of everything Canada exports comes to us. Our supply chains run through their factories. Our security depends on their territory. This isn't just an alliance. It's almost like we're one economic organism with two governments. So when Trump said Canada gets a lot of freebies from us, he wasn't making a joke. He was redefining the entire relationship. Security isn't a right guaranteed by treaty anymore. It's a service, one that can be turned off, one that comes with conditions. And Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, he understood immediately. The day before, he'd given his own speech at Davos. He used one word that sent shockwaves through everyone listening: rupture. Not a transition, not a rough patch, a rupture. Something that breaks and doesn't get fixed. Carney's talking about middle powers now. Countries like Canada, Australia, Japan, European nations. He's saying they need to band together because, quote, if we are not at the table, we are on the menu. Now here's where it gets really interesting. For years, China has been telling developing countries that America doesn't have allies, just servants. That all our talk about partnership and democracy is just cover for domination. And Trump just confirmed it, live, on camera, at the most elite gathering of Western power. China didn't have to do anything. We did their propaganda for them. Okay, now let's talk about Greenland. And I know what you're thinking. Greenland? Seriously? That whole thing was ridiculous. Except it wasn't. Pull up a map of the Arctic. Now trace the path that Russian or Chinese missiles would take to hit us. Notice anything? The shortest route goes right over Greenland. This isn't about real estate, it's about physics. We're building something called the Golden Dome. It's a missile defense system designed to shoot down hypersonic weapons during their boost phase, those critical first minutes after launch when they're most vulnerable. The Congressional Budget Office says it'll cost somewhere between $160 billion and $540 billion over the next 20 years. Some analysts think it could hit $1 trillion. But here's the thing. Congress has already allocated over $24 billion to get it started. SpaceX is lined up for a $2 billion contract. Over 2,000 companies are already working on it. This isn't science fiction. It's happening. And Greenland is absolutely essential to making it work. You need interceptors positioned directly under the missile trajectories, which means the Arctic, which means Greenland. So Trump didn't just casually suggest buying Greenland. He threatened 10% tariffs on 8 European countries, including Denmark, which controls Greenland. Said those tariffs would jump to 25% by June. And Europe blinked. After a meeting with NATO's Secretary General, Trump announced they'd reached the framework of a deal for Greenland and the entire Arctic region. The tariffs got suspended. What's in that deal? Trump called it complex and refused to give details. But the message is crystal clear. America is closing its main vulnerability to nuclear attack. Here's the problem with that. For 80 years, nuclear peace has been maintained by something called Mutual assured destruction. Nobody launches because everyone dies. But if America becomes invulnerable while Russia and China stay vulnerable, that whole equation breaks down. We're not making the world safer. We're making it less stable. Russia's watching this and thinking, our nukes might not work against America anymore. Maybe we need to use them before we lose them. China's accelerating their nuclear program right now, building new missile silos, new submarines, new delivery systems. And here's the kicker. Defense is always more expensive than offense. It costs way more to shoot down missiles than to build more missiles. So we spend $1 trillion on defense, and they spend $100 billion overwhelming it. The paradox? Building this fortress might actually make war more likely, not less. Let me show you something that's flying under the radar. Split your screen. On one side, Germany. Wind turbines turning slowly. Electricity prices up 64%. Factories shutting down or moving production to cheaper countries. On the other side, the United States. Natural gas production at all-time highs. We're producing 108 billion cubic feet per day. That matches Russia, Iran, and China combined. Oil production? Over 24 million barrels a day, more than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. While Europe's been debating the ethics of AI, Trump's been obsessed with one thing: electricity. Because here's what most people miss. AI isn't just code, it's energy. These data centers we're building, they consume as much power as entire countries. Meta's building a 5-gigawatt AI facility. Microsoft's buying power from 3 Mile Island's nuclear plant. Amazon's dropping $20 billion on data centers in Pennsylvania, right next to nuclear facilities. Trump's administration has lifted environmental restrictions and fast-tracked permits. He claims he can approve oil and gas plants in 2 weeks, nuclear plants in 3. That's not actually possible under current regulations, but the intent is clear: speed over safety, power over precaution. His logic? You have Greta Thunberg. We have the energy to actually build the future. America's winning the power race. But here's the twist. While we're betting everything on fossil fuels and nuclear, China's offering Europe the green transition they want. Solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, infrastructure that ties European energy to Chinese supply chains. The more Trump mocks wind turbines, the more Europe turns to Beijing. We're winning one war and losing another without even realizing it. At Davos, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, stood up and talked about Europe's Nixon moment. She's referring to 1971, when Nixon abandoned the gold standard and shocked European allies. The realization that Big Brother won't save you anymore. Europe's response? The Rearm Europe plan. 800 billion euros for defense by 2030. Sounds massive, right? Do the math. That's 27 countries over 5 years. Meanwhile, the U.S. defense budget alone is over $850 billion every single year. Europe can't replace us. 80% of their military equipment comes from imports, mostly from U.S. F-16s, F-35s, missile defense systems, logistics tech, and of course the nuclear umbrella. We have 100,000 troops stationed over there. The Rearm Europe plan isn't a game changer. It's a desperate attempt to reduce dependency while admitting that dependency can't actually be eliminated. And Canada? Prime Minister Carney left Davos without even meeting Trump. He's heading to India to negotiate trade deals. He's resetting relations with China after years of diplomatic freeze. The message is loud and clear. We're not putting all our eggs in one basket anymore. Trump wanted allies to pay more for defense. Mission accomplished. But they're also starting to de-risk from us. Think about the irony. Europe already paid a massive price when they cut off Russian energy after Ukraine. They turned to American liquefied natural gas. They became more dependent on us. And now we're weaponizing that dependency against them. All right, let's do some accounting. What have we actually gained? The wins. The economy's growing. Oil and gas production at record levels. Gas prices at 4-year lows. The Golden Dome's being built. Allies are paying more for defense. We've secured access to Greenland. From a purely tactical standpoint, this looks like victory. But now flip the page. The costs. We've become isolated. Fortress America might be impregnable, but it's surrounded by a world that's organizing against us. China's Belt and Road Initiative now reaches 150 countries. That's 75% of the world's population, over half of global GDP. They're positioning themselves as the partner who respects sovereignty, who doesn't attach political strings to development money, who offers an alternative to American dominance. And it's working. For the first time ever, a recent survey showed that global perceptions of the United States have fallen below China's. Beijing's favorability is rising. Ours is dropping. When Trump threatened tariffs against BRICS countries, Brazil's chief advisor to President Lula said something remarkable. These threats are reinforcing our relations with BRICS because we want diversified relations and not depend on any one country. Read that again. Our threats are making them want to work together against us. This is what historians call the fortress trap. Throughout history, fortress states achieve incredible short-term security. They build impregnable walls. They create self-sufficient economies. They convince themselves they need nobody. And then the world moves on without them. The Soviet Union built a fortress of ideology, collapsed when the world stopped caring. The Japanese Empire built a fortress of military power, got starved of resources when the world refused to trade. The British Empire built a fortress of naval supremacy, went bankrupt winning wars it couldn't afford. America's fortress is different in the details, but not in essence. We're building it on energy dominance, tech supremacy, military invulnerability, and the assumption that the world has no choice but to comply. But the world always has choices. China's offering one: development without democracy lectures, infrastructure without regime change, loans without political conditions. The Global South is offering another, a coalition of 8 billion people who are tired of being pawns in great power games. They're increasingly determining where capital flows, where technology develops, where the future gets built. Even weakened Europe offers an alternative: cooperation over coercion, rules over raw power, multilateralism over unilateralism. We can be the strongest, the richest, the most technologically advanced. But if we're also the most isolated, if our allies become servants and our partnerships become transactions, then strength becomes a prison. This is what Davos 2026 taught us. This is the world we're building, one ultimatum at a time. We're winning every battle and losing the war. The fortress is almost complete. The walls are going up. The gates are locking. And while we celebrate inside, the rest of the world is learning to live without us. That's the real story. Not what Trump said about Canada or Greenland or wind turbines, but what happens when the most powerful nation on earth mistakes isolation for strength. Welcome to the fortress trap. If this analysis opened your eyes to what's really happening behind the headlines, hit that subscribe button. We're breaking down the stories the mainstream media won't touch. Drop a comment and let me know. Is America building a fortress or digging a grave? I'll see you in the next one.